So the GC 101 course, as we envision it then, has people go deeper, understand more completely the distinctions that are opened up in the symposium, and also provide a way for people to now begin to get into action in the world, in actually being involved in building the world that we envision as a possibility through the Awakening Dreamer program, through the symposium, this environmentally sustainable, spiritually fulfilling, socially just human presence on our planet, rather than it just being about creating a new form of consciousness, which is absolutely essential. It's about being engaged in the world where that consciousness begins to become embodied. So this combination of being in action and in dialogue and inquiry is what we're trying to do with this GC 101 course. To create this world of a just, sustainable world, clearly it needs a people empowered by that vision and motivated and committed, a stand for bringing that vision into reality in the world. But we also need to look skillfully at and see that there are structures and systems of power, of governance, of domination in the world that are committed to the status quo, or committed to an old story in our world, a story that has allowed the creation of an unsustainable world environmentally, an unjust world socially, and a world of alienation spiritually. So the thing that we've noticed, or that we have identified, is that the basic governing structures that we as people have created are not responsive to we the people anymore. The game is rigged. And what I mean by that is that the structures and system of governments that we live in, the control of that and the rule-making within that is controlled by a narrow few who have the rules set up to advantage themselves, and then use that advantage to continue to write rules that cement and anchor in their advantage. And all of the issues then that people want, that we the people want to deal with, we can't even get our Congress to deal with. They don't even come up on the radar in Congress, because the powers that are controlling the structure of rulemaking in our society, controlling our government, have rigged it in their favor. And until we get rid of that, undo the rigging of the game, our ability to address the issues that are most meaningful to us is I don't want to say futile, but close to futile. So the fundamental thing that we're looking at, encouraging people to get engaged in, is a movement that's already building, but it's a movement to really take back our democracy, to have our government responsive to we the people. It's to really create a government of, by, and for the people. That was the vision of our founding fathers that has never quite gotten in place. Pachamama Alliance's strategy, what we're looking at is, as we build this critical mass of conscious, committed human beings, we want to mobilize them towards what we see are getting at the root causes, not dealing with the symptoms, but getting at the root causes. There's this wonderful quote from Thoreau that there are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil to one who's striking at the roots. So what we want to do with the mobilization we're doing is we want to move some of those thousands, but we want to move as many people as possible towards striking at the roots of the rigged game. And what we're seeing is the root of the rigged game is the corruption of our democracy and the takeover of our democracy by narrow corporate and moneyed interest, and the disconnect that our democracy has with we the people. When we talk about this being a global citizens course or a game-changing course, the game-changing we're talking about is people in this course acquiring the understanding and the tools to be able to see how to effectively get involved in this issue of bringing our government back to we the people. Obviously a huge issue, a huge task, but the most critical one that human beings on this planet could be working on. And it's not just an issue in the United States, it's an issue around the world, this issue of concentrated money and power subverting the will of we the people. But the United States is like the starting point. So there's a movement building in this country around reclaiming the vision of our democracy. It's aimed at getting a constitutional amendment passed that addresses the issues of corporate personhood, money in politics, and that's the strategy that we're encouraging people to do. It's not our movement, it's not a Pachamama Alliance movement, it's the movement. And at one level, it's probably the biggest, most important movement that humanity could undertake, which is getting back the structures of governance to be dependent on we the people. And so that's our strategy. There's another wonderful Thoreau quote, where Thoreau says, of what use is a fine house if you haven't a tolerable planet to put it on? So clearly this reclaiming democracy allows us to start to address a lot of issues. Addressing climate change would be one of them. However, climate change is immediate and we can't do it sequentially. We can't wait to address climate change until we've addressed the issues of creating a functioning democracy. So we're also encouraging people to join with the climate change movement in a specific way, and it's around getting legislation passed in the U.S. Congress to put a price on carbon emissions. So it could be, it's called a carbon tax, a carbon fee, a refundable carbon tax. And that's an initiative that we're encouraging people to get involved in, and we're saying that that's a game changer also. If we can get that legislation passed, it doesn't end the game, it begins the game then of addressing addressing climate change, but it creates a huge opening then for effective action to be able to be taken to address climate change. So two initiatives that we're looking at. One is this initiative of reclaiming the vision of our democracy, and the other is at the same time making sure that as we build this fine house, that we've got a tolerable planet to put it on, so getting engaged with climate change through the movement that's building around getting a price put on carbon emissions by the U.S. Congress. And I know that can all sound like, well, that's really political. You're being political. And that's a charge that is used a lot. When you look at that, what that really means is when people say, well, you're just being political, what they're really saying is, well, it sounds like you're trying to create conflict. And people think that politics is about conflict, or it's used as that people use it as a way to avoid engaging. Like, I don't want to get involved in conflict, so I'll just do my life in a safe way that I can feel good about, and it's not about conflict. Being political doesn't mean committed to creating conflict. Being political means being committed to use the structures that we've created to create the future that we want. We want to be in there in using our structures of government to skillfully resolve differences, to have people come together democratically and resolve differences. You could really kind of summarize or get a handle around the work that the Pachamama Alliance sees itself doing. We're about creating a new kind of we the people. A people that's deeply grounded in a sacred relationship with the earth, deeply committed to the well-being of all life, and deeply committed to building a socially just and thriving human civilization on this planet, with the human species recognizing that it has a particular role of responsibility now to shift from being a mainly destructive influence on the planet to a beneficial influence on the planet, to having a mutually enhancing human-Earth relationship. That's the great work of our time.